The February 12th, 2026 Agenda Review Meeting of the Greasetown Board will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Supervisor McCann?
Here.
Councilman DePonzio?
Present.
Councilman Bernard?
Here.
Councilwoman Miller? Present. Councilman Antelli?
Okay, would you please stand? Councilwoman Miller will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we'll now have a moment of silent prayer. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now have the public forum. This is an opportunity to address the town board on any issues of concern relative to the town of Greece. This is not a question and answer period, nor is it a time or place for commenting on previous applications that have come before the board. If you have a comment or question concerning an application, or if you'd like to provide the board with any type of paperwork, please leave it in the inbox located on top of the lectern. The clerk will obtain all the documents after the meeting and disperse them to the board members accordingly. Please use the center aisle when appropriate when approaching the lectern. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to address the board in accordance with the town's civility policy. Please state your name and address for the record. Is there anybody who cares to address the board?
Good evening, Steve DiBattisto, 364 Island Cottage Road. I have spoken to this board and previous town boards several times about the Island Cottage project and its effect on my property. When the previous administration rezoned the entire area Central Health Care with economic development overlay, they included my house and the properties as well as my neighbor's property across the street. None of us were notified of these zoning changes when they happened in 2020. Town code states that a prominent sign should be placed as part of the notification, and that did not happen. These properties are residents and should be zoned residential. I am asking the board to remove the economic development overlay and central healthcare designation for my property and rezone it to single-family residential as its actual use. My neighbor Jack Lynch, who is in Florida now, is in the same situation, and he asked me to make the same request on his behalf. There are few operating farms left in the town of Greece. This zoning affects my farm. If we are forced to move, the character of this neighborhood will forever be changed. The current zoning designation guarantees that houses, barns, horse facilities, and the historic schoolhouse relocated from Kirk Road, which was once a part of this farm, and one of the original schools in the town of Greece. All of these will be demolished as they have no purpose in the zoning that they are currently designated as. As it is, I worry that the current zoning puts my horses at mercy of the town, as commercial zoning regulations for horses can be different from residential. Having a property zoned differently from its actual use threatens our property values, our insurance rates, the security to use our properties as we have been using them, the historical character of the area, and our abilities to rebuild structures on our properties if damage occurs. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Murphy.
Ryan Murphy, 197 Old Country Road. I talked to
board members at the open house in regards to this. And I know one of the questions that you guys had was the spot rezoning. You know, are we going to get in trouble? Are we going to get sued? And I know that was Mr. Copey's big thing. I sent you earlier this week, March, May, July, August, November of last year, the town board, when a owner of a property came in front of the board and asked to have their property rezoned for whatever purpose, they did it. No problems, just for whatever reason it was. I also sent you something from, what was it, September of '23, when the town board, on its own accord, planned to rezone 1053 and 1071 Flynn Road, making the property an economic development zone and naming the town board itself the lead agency and seeker. The town board, in the very recent past, has given itself precedent, and according to Mr. Copey, has legal authority to rezone those properties as they were. You have here the owner asking you specifically to do that, and there is absolutely no reason. You do have the authority to remove that EDO, or economic development designation, from that area, leave the one property in question for now as CHC, and put the other properties, town shooting range, back to private. Private residence properties back to R118. What you're doing is you're protecting the residents. Sure, Mr. Copey told us that the lawsuit is already written up. You know what? I would rather pay legal fees because you guys get sued protecting the residents than pay legal fees from the town getting sued by the residents for putting them in danger. Now, the current project required, the planning board said they were not going to give building permits unless easement documents were filed with Monroe County and permit was gotten with the Highway Department. I don't know if those have ever happened, but you know what? If they have not gotten a building permit, this project never exists to begin with. And I know for a fact that since that happened, they have not been back in front of the planning board. So that project, Mr. Copey said the other day, there are no active building permits, no variance permits, no nothing on that property. It's a dead property. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Mr. McCann, is I had several people reach out to me the other day saying that they had heard that the town of Greece was renewing all the variances or waivers for town employees and senior officials. Are you renewing the waivers for Chief Wood, Deputy Chief Springer, and Deputy Chief Znelevik? You stated the night you were elected that you were not going to, we may not like what you do, but you are always going to follow the law. Law says if there are open civil service lists, you got to go with them. Are you going to rehire the people that have, to this point, cost the town maybe $5 million in lawsuits? Or are you going to go off of active civil service lists?
Mr. Murphy, I know this isn't a question and answer period. I just want to let you know, I don't appreciate you coming to a public forum like this and then also discussing with town board members personnel matters like that, and especially when there's absolutely no truth to what you're saying. And the fact that I'm responding to your rumors is really not something I want to get into a habit of doing, but I'm not also going to have false information out there in the community when you're speaking to members of the town board when this is all going to the public. I would appreciate it if
It's
you would
not going to the public. I wanted to confirm it
if you would not
first.
repeat rumors And again, I have no idea who you're talking to. There have been no waivers issued for any of the people you've mentioned. There have
Perfect.
been a couple waivers that have been handed to other people, and I just want you to know, I don't appreciate that, so thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to address the town board? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I thought somebody else was going to speak, but my name is Cheryl Phillips. I live at 848 Edgemere Drive. I just wanted to express my appreciation for the open house that you hosted the other night. It was very refreshing to be actually invited to interact with our town government officials. Might be a foreign concept to some of us, but it was enjoyable. It was informative. Everyone was friendly and professional, and it kind of actually felt like a social event because it was festive and it was great. I really appreciated it, and everyone I spoke to was very impressed. So it felt like we were all part of this town together. Thank you for a positive experience.
Yes, thank you.
Brendan Bolson, 440 Shorecliff Drive. I'd actually like to second that. Thank you guys for having that open house. It was an amazing time for the community to reach out and see who is helping to run our town daily. I'd also like to thank the town for the meeting last night here at Town Hall in regards to the water chestnut cleanup on the ponds. I know that's going to take a lot of work, and we're probably looking at least 12 years that this thing is going to need people's invested time in that. So it's really good to bring that to the attention. I like the changes that I'm seeing here. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the town board? Okay, there being no other speakers, public forum is now closed. We'll now begin the review of the agenda items. Madam Clerk, please go ahead and start the agenda, please.
Item number 1, authorization to reappoint Thomas Willis III to a 5-year term as member of the Town of Greece Board of Assessment Review, effective October 1st, 2026, term to expire September 30th, 2030.
Any discussion on this item? Okay, next item.
Item number 2, authorization for the Greece Police Department to accept a sum of $49,900 awarded from the New York State Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program.
Any questions?
Is this money, is the grant being used for something in particular, or is it just going to the general fund, or?
There is a list of projects that are being
Okay.
done with this, right? Deputy Chief?
Equipment? Oh, cool. Congratulations on winning the grant.
Okay, next item, please.
Item number 3, authorization to enter into various agreements for programs associated with the operation of the library. Further authorization for the supervisor to execute all necessary documentation.
Okay, any discussion? Okay. Next item, please.
Item number 4, authorization to appoint 2 full-time office clerk 4s for the Parks and Recreation Department effective February 14th, 2026.
Okay.
Are these new positions,
Uh,
newly created positions, or are they just promotion?
You know, one thing, we had talked about this before. I know there was a question someone had asked, and actually, Director Dobson, if you could just fact check me here. It's my understanding that when something is on an agenda and it's authorizing the filling of a position, that is an existing position.
Okay.
And if we're going to be adding something new, there would be a creating a position and then filling the position. So,
Noted.
how did I do, Director?
That-
Okay, all right, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5, authorization to appoint 1 full-time recreation assistant for the Parks and Recreation Department effective February 14th, 2026. Authorization to appoint one full-time laborer for the Parks and Recreation Department effective February 14th, 2026.
No, sir.
Item number 7, authorization to appoint one full-time office clerk for the town clerk's office effective February 14th, 2026. Item number 8, authorization to appoint 2 full-time maintenance mechanic 2 for the Department of Public Works effective February 14th, 2026. Item number 9, authorization to appoint 1 full-time labor foreman for the Department of Public Works effective February 14th, 2026. Item number 10, authorization to appoint 2 part-time school traffic guards effective February 14th, 2026. Item number 11, authorization to enter into various agreements for programs associated with the operation of the center.
Any questions? Next item, please.
Item number 12, authorization to set a bid opening date of March 16th, 2026 at 3 p.m. for the town cleaning services bid.
Any discussion? Next item, please.
Item number 13, authorization to renew the town window cleaning contract with Main Window Cleaners per same terms and conditions. Further authorization for the supervisor to execute all necessary documentation.
Any discussion? Okay, next item, please.
Item number 14, authorization to renew the lawn care and vegetation control contract with Lawn Doctor. Further authorization for the supervisor to execute all necessary documentation.
Discussion? All right, next item, please.
Item number 15, authorization to add the federal Juneteenth holiday to the list of paid holidays for all town employees.
Okay, any discussion? Next item, please.
Item number 16, acceptance of proposed changes to the 2026 Manager's Benefit Summary with future adjustments governed by applicable laws, policies, and past practices.
Okay, if I could take a second to address this and put a little more detail with this, and then if there are any questions or further discussions. In 2022, there were some significant changes that were made to the manager's handbook. Most notably, there was an allowance for managers to cash out unused sick time upon their retirement. This is a practice that doesn't happen in any other level of government that I'm aware of in our community. It has, well, let me talk about the next thing. Another change that was made was guidelines regarding managers' healthcare payments upon retirement. The policy was switched to require no contribution on the part of managers. Both of these things were done as part of the 2022 update. And then in 2023, the policy was changed to allow 100% buyout of unused sick time, which is even more egregious, obviously, than the 25% with this. This policy has resulted in almost $350,000 in town taxpayer money being paid to 6 employees who have retired under this policy, and that is on top of vacation buyouts, which vacation buyouts are something people are legally entitled to. So there's no issue with that, but the fact that $350,000 of taxpayer money was used and the policy was changed. And again, in addition to this not being a policy that any other government has, it's also a benefit that's not available to any other class of employee at the town of Greece. So we looked at this policy, right? We felt it was a matter of fairness, equity among employees here, and then also a matter of fairness to the taxpayers. The fact that $350,000 has been spent on this is frankly appalling to me. This is money that we could have used for other purposes, and is something that we wanted to bring to the board's attention. It's something that we're looking to change the handbook, and there are other tweaks that we might make to that handbook down the road, but those are really the biggest things, to eliminate the buyout of sick time, and then also reinstituting the policy of having employees pay what they're paying as employees when they leave and they retire with that. So I think that's sort of a high level of what we're looking at. I don't know, is there anybody else who has any discussions? All right, cool.
Yeah, I just want to say, well, I want to first thank Nicole Dobson, Molly Clifford, and Tracy for the briefing that they gave the town board members. It was very helpful, and I'm grateful for them for uncovering this. And I certainly support this change. And for the people out there, one of my questions was, how is this going to affect current management, and if this was going to cause any morale issues with current town staff? And I was satisfied by the response I got, and so I'm grateful for them being conscientious in thinking about other staff when making this decision. One question I do have was, how is this paid for? And was this money budgeted in the 2026 budget? If we didn't discover this policy and didn't make the change, did they budget for this in the previous administration budget for this in the 2026 budget, or did they fund this out of the reserves or something like that?
Director Easterly, would you like to comment?
Okay. For the 2025 payouts, that was certainly not budgeted, so we haven't yet completed our audit, so we're going to have to see how that all falls out and where that is going to have to be funded from.
Okay.
And no, also in 2026, there was no budget appropriations for that usage.
Okay, thank you very much. Just so the public knows, this board, the 2026 budget was approved by the previous administration, so we're stuck with it.
Yes, it was. Anybody else have any comments or questions or any information? Okay, all right, thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 17, authorization to increase the Board of Assessment Review bar contractual pay for reviewers to $35 an hour from $30 an hour, and for the board chairman to $40 an hour from $35 an hour, beginning at the start of the bar term of 2026.
Okay, any discussion on this? Okay, thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 18, waiver of the requirement for a new special use permit to operate a restaurant known as OG Dumpling House located at 2633 West Ridge Road, Suite 1, Monroe County Tax Number 074.14-3-7.2, requested by OG Dumpling House, Inc.
Okay, any questions or any discussions on this? And in the interest of full disclosure, I am a huge fan of the OG Dumpling House in Henrietta, and I'm looking forward to their opening, which will be sometime this summer. So, okay. Next item, please.
Item number 19, waiver of the requirement for a new special use permit to operate a restaurant known as Jeremiah's Tavern located at 300 Patty Creek Circle, Monroe County Tax Number 074.20-2-24.23. Furthermore, the issuance of a waiver of the 30-day notification and comment period on an application to the New York State Liquor Authority for a liquor license requested by Jeremiah's Grease, Inc.
So this is the location where Silo exited?
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, I'm a fan of Jeremiah's Tavern, so we're one for one.
When are they expecting to open, do you know?
Mr. Copey, do you know?
I would say late summer, maybe fall.
Nice. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 20, adoption of a resolution certifying the town of Greece as a pro-housing community under New York State Homes and Community Renewals Pro-Housing Communities Program.
Mr. Copey, could you just speak to this for a moment?
Sure, Supervisor. So this is a program that was brought to by Governor Hochul, I believe in 2023, maybe it might have been 22, but basically, this is intended to encourage communities to encourage housing, construction of housing, and to upstate New York, they would like to see us increase the housing stock, and this is all types of housing, apartments, townhomes, and single-family homes. They would like us to be increasing the housing stock by like 1/3% each year. Downstate, they're looking for a 1% increase in communities. And by certifying for this program, we provide them with permit information, and without the certification, we don't qualify for certain funding opportunities through New York State. So this will open a lot of doors for the town of Greece to secure funding, not just for housing purposes either. There are a variety of programs that will come out with this year's consolidated funding application, which is the state's annual grant program outlet. A lot of programs are going to be available to the town of Greece that haven't been available in a few years. So.
And Director Copey, can you speak for a moment to the number and the growth, right? I guess I want to, I'll ask you a leading question here. I don't want people to get the wrong idea that this is somehow going to open the floodgates and, we're going to be going crazy in terms of building stuff.
Home construction, residential construction period, regardless of what type it is driven by the market, and so I don't anticipate that this is going to increase housing. The demand for housing in Greece is similar to the demand across the country. It won't make the town any more appealing to developers than it already is, which is pretty appealing. For home construction, it's a great place to live. So it really doesn't change anything except that the town board would pass this resolution and basically say that they want to encourage the construction of housing, whether it's programmatically or with zoning. We've actually made some zoning changes in the last few years that help us to qualify already, that accommodates different kinds of housing. And just the demand, the construction demand. There's the market studies that have been done in the town show that there is a market for additional housing, single-family townhomes across the community. So there is demand there, and again, it will be driven by the market.
And if I could ask one more question, then I know Councilman Bernard has a question. I know in conversations we've had before, that number that's required is something that we're hitting now for all practical
We're just short of it right now, and
Okay.
so you can either certify back 1 year. So last year the permits, and it's based on the number of permits that were issued, right? So we've approved for construction. When I say approved, I would say the planning approvals, right? We've approved for construction enough single-family homes, apartments, townhomes in the last 5 years to qualify if the permits had all been issued yet. So the homes have planning approvals. The builders need to do nothing more than come in and with a permit application to build, which is a ministerial permit. There's no discretion really involved in that. So we've authorized the permitting of these homes, but they haven't been permitted just yet. I would imagine by the end of this coming year that the 2026 allotment of permits may qualify us for the end of this year based on the permits issued because of the projects we know that are in the pipe right now. But by passing this resolution, we can qualify anyway. So you don't need to hit those targets to be able to qualify. You just need to express an interest in trying to hit those targets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I have just a quick question for you. Does New York State, I know with the push to get more houses built, that there was talk about suspending certain secret requirements, environmental reviews and stuff like this. With this, does that take away the town's ability for any of those reviews to try and streamline housing?
Does it take No, that doesn't take, if the jury's still out a little bit, they announced that they're going to amend the seeker regulations to accommodate housing, but they haven't given any detail yet.
Okay. But this program in and of itself doesn't take away any of our normal review process or anything like that, right?
I don't know. So the normal review process for a project, depending on the size of it, requires seeker determination. I don't think that they're going to completely eliminate the need to do that. They may be able to shorten some timelines, but frankly, they haven't really told us exactly how they're going to modify the requirements to accommodate. But, so we don't really know the answer just yet. Certainly, it would make home building more appealing to builders. If the process were a little bit easier, you know, by some respects, the secret process is a bit archaic. You know, there's some of the procedures I think could be streamlined, but just generally, you know, so maybe they'll do some of that for housing projects.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all right, thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 21, authorization to make application to the 2025 New York State Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP, for design and construction of the New York State Route 390 Multi-Use Trail Rehabilitation Project. Furthermore, the town board hereby assures that the non-federal share of project costs will be covered with local funds or other eligible non-federal funding sources secured by the town.
Director Copey, would you mind giving a brief explanation of this?
Sure. So the Route 390 bike path, if everybody's not familiar with it, it's a 4 or 5 mile paved bike path that parallels Route 390. It was constructed in the early 80s and has outlived its maintainable lifespan. This is a topic of discussion that's been going for a number of years now. We get a lot of complaints about the condition of the trail. It's owned by New York State, but maintained by the town of Greece under an agreement. Agreement from the early 80s. And so it's a state-owned facility. By all rights, maybe the state ought to pay to construct it because that's what's needed at this point. The maintenance has been done to the best of our ability. It's just outlived its lifespan. So the TAP program, Transportation Alternatives Program, is a state-funded program. It's federal transportation dollars, but it's a state-administered program that allows construction or rehabilitation of existing active transportation facilities like a bike path or something like that. And the state has actually encouraged us to pursue that funding. It's not going to be a cheap project, you know. Our early estimates are in the millions, you know. There is a matching requirement. There's a 20% matching requirement, and the terminology is the agenda item here. It's non-federal, so it can be time. So, in addition to this program, we're also pursuing a grant from New York State Parks to try to help cover the non-federal match. And there are some other programs that we're looking at to potentially do that. New York State, through the TAP program, also offers up to 75% of that 20%, up to 15% of the total project for certain facilities, including states. So even a state-owned facility would ultimately cover that piece. There would be very little cost to the town in pursuing those other options. The point in time when we will become committed to doing the project is when we sign the state and the local agreement, which is after they grant approval. So we would know about this whether this project gets funded sometime through this.
Thank you. Any questions, any other comments? Okay.
Somebody that uses that trail a lot, I welcome, and I'm really grateful you guys are going out for that grant. Do you know when they will reward or announce rewards?
They announced I want to say it's going to be June or July. The final application is due in March. I could be wrong about that. It'll be fall before we know for sure, and then it takes a little bit of time to get an agreement laid out. So this is a project for both design and construction, so it's a multi-year project. It would be optimistic to think that it would be completed even by the end of '27, but it's possible.
Thank you.
Okay.
Supervisor McCann, I just wanted to also let everyone know that Senator Cooney and Assemblyman Jensen have both written letters of support for this application, so I think we're also optimistic, hopefully.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 22, establishment of a public hearing date of March 19th, 2026 at 6:05 PM to consider a proposed amendment to the town's Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Annual Action Plan to reallocate expiring CDBG-CV COVID-19 funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to the Greece Residential Improvement Program, or GRIP.
Okay. Any-
Sorry,
Pardon me?
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, is there any questions or comments? Yes,
Sorry
go-
for
go ahead.
interrupting
No,
your
no,
supervisor. Yes, I do, Supervisor McCann. Regarding GRIP, what can those funds be used for, or what are they used for?
So the COVID money, this is money that was given to us by HUD in April of 2020 during the outset of the COVID pandemic. And it's in addition, it supplements our existing GRIP program, but we can only use it for certain things. And those things include construction aspects of home construction that can affect your respiratory health. So your furnace, windows that could potentially be leaking and causing mold, a roof the same way, you know, that could potentially be leaking and causing mold. It's a sort of a limited amount of, you know, things that you could do
Yep.
with it, but we haven't had much trouble using it up.
Is there an application process that residents would seek such support?
Yes, there is. Yeah, they can access the GRIP program on the town's website, or they can call 723-2384. That's 384, I believe is the number.
What's the
Call the
turn?
town hall and ask for the GRIP administrator. They'll get Shanna.
Excellent. What if, for example, someone needed this help, they qualified, how soon would they see relief?
So it's a process, and, you know, so if they qualify, you have to qualify, the cost or the appraised value of the home comes into account, the income level of the applicant comes into account. And if they qualify, one of Joe's inspectors goes out, and the town actually decides which repair needs to be done, because you might want a roof, but the windows might be more important, and we've only got so much money to spend on your house. So we actually determine what's most important and what we can pay for. At the moment, the homeowner is the one that goes out and finds a contractor, and we're talking about, you know, how that works going forward. But, you know, I would say within a couple of months of their application, we know what they need, what they're going to get done. Sometimes it takes a little while for them to get, to get bids. It could be 6 months potentially before the work gets started, but they generally wrap up in like a year.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Certain emergencies go a little bit. Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or
How much
discussions?
is left in the COVID funds?
All told, about 80,000, right, Tracy? That's what we determined today, and we're gonna, and some of that was in administration funds, and some of it was in another account that we can't really use up, so we're gonna transfer it over to the GRIP program and put it to work.
Okay, next item, please.
Item number 23, authorization to appoint one full-time deputy commissioner effective February 28th, 2026.
Okay, any
Yeah, Mr.
discussion?
Supervisor, What department is this for?
Public Works.
Public Works, okay, thank you.
Okay, next item, please.
Item number 24, authorization for the supervisor to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with Monroe County Stormwater Coalition.
Okay. Any discussion, any questions? Okay, thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 25, authorization for the Department of Public Works to purchase a tractor loader backhoe off the New York State bid contract.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, next item, please.
Item number 26, authorization for the Department of Public Works to purchase three 3/4-ton 4x4 pickups utilizing the New York State Vehicle Marketplace mini bid process. 2 of the trucks will be equipped with plows, and 1 will include a power lift gate.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, next item, please.
Item number 27, authorization for the Department of Public Works to purchase a 10-wheel heavy-duty cab chassis off the Onondaga County bid contract. Furthermore, authorization to purchase a dump body plow wing, material spreader, and associated equipment off the National Purchasing Partners government contract. This equipment with installation will be purchased to complete the 10-wheel cab chassis. Did I say that right?
Yep. Any discussion? All right, next item, please.
Item number 28, authorization to extend the 2022 streetlight maintenance disconnection and installation electrical services with Power and Construction Group, Inc. This is the fourth and final extension. Further authorization for the supervisor to execute all related documents.
Okay, any discussion? All right, next item, please.
Item number 29, authorization to extend the following contracts for an additional year with no changes in pricing and contract terms. Further authorization for the supervisor to execute all related documents. The 2022 body repair and painting of large trucks with hawk frame and axle. This is the fourth of four possible extensions. The 2025 sale of surplus wood chips. This is the first of four possible extensions.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, next item, please.
Item number 30, authorization to execute the municipal snow and ice supplemental agreement number 1 to contract number D014819 between the State of New York and the Town of Greece. This contract sets a reimbursement rate for snow and ice removal on New York State roads by town crews. Further authorization for the supervisor to execute all related documents.
Okay, any discussion? All right, next item,
Mr.
please.
Supervisor,
Oh,
I do
sorry.
have a comment.
Okay.
I want to commend and thank the DPW and the snowplow drivers for their excellent work during these past few snow. And from what we discussed in our open house, I think we have had all plows out recently at the same time, and that's an amazing feat, so thank you.
Okay, all right. Next item, please.
Item number 31, authorization to set a bid opening date of Monday, March 16th, 2026 at 3 p.m. for the following: 2026 purchase of grass seed.
Okay, any discussion? Next item, please.
Item number 32, authorization to accept one or more planned giving donations to Grease Animal Services in the amount of $100 or as otherwise gifted from Beverly Earlrich.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, next item, please.
Item number 33, authorization to accept grant funds from Best Friends Network Partners for Grease Animal Services in the amount of $2,000.
Okay, any discussion? All right, next item, please.
Item number 34, authorization to accept grant funds from the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, ASPCA, for Grease Animal Services in the amount of $34,400.
Okay, any discussion? All right, next item, please.
Item number 35, authorization to make various adjustments and transfers to the 2026 budget list attached.
Okay. All right, any discussion? Okay, all right, so this concludes the agenda portion of our meeting. We now have a presentation from Mengel, Metzger, and Barr. One of the items we talked about last month was having somebody from our auditor, one of our auditors, come to our meeting and give a review of how we, what the auditors do, what they look at, and maybe talk to us a little bit about that process, so. Yeah, and I would also say, if there are any department heads who don't want to stay for this part, feel free to head out, so, okay. Okay, welcome.
Thank you. I'm not a microphone expert, so I'm not sure if is it on? Oh, great. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for inviting us here tonight. And my name's Tom Zuber. I'm one of the partners with the firm. And, you know, we've been working with the town of Greece for 2 years now. Our first audit for the town took place in 2023. Okay. And so what we're here to talk a little bit about. Sure. I wasn't sure if we were just going to use that. All right. So the handouts that are coming out are what's presenting on the TV here. So again, my name's Tom Zuber, so I'm one of the partners on the job, or the partner on the job. And again, what the idea of today was to just walk through what we would call our audit planning process for the town. And so just kind of go over a few of the highlights of what the audit process is like, talking about some of the key areas and the processes that we work through when we're going to do an audit. So, the different areas we'll talk about: scope of services, management roles and responsibilities, the audit approach, different controls. So some technical things, and towards the end of the highlight or the presentation, I'll just kind of highlight a few areas relating to the December 31st, 2024 financial statement, to just kind of give you folks an idea of a couple of the key things that were discussed last year. So in terms of the different audits that we do, so as some of the audits are required by law, primarily, we do the audit of the basic financial statement. So that's your operating account. So your general fund, your highway fund, your library fund, so the different operating accounts of the town. That really is the basic financial statement. In addition to that, if you get federal dollars that exceed a certain threshold, then the federal government requires you to have what's called a single audit. And it's just focused on those federal dollars. So primarily it's the Community Development Block Grant for the past few years that that gets you over the threshold. The threshold has been $750,000. It's jumped up to $1 million this year. So if you received more than $1 million in federal monies, then that audit kicks in. And if you have to have a federal single audit, there's also a New York State Department of Transportation audit that has to be done as well. So that's another audit that really focuses on the state-funded dollars, okay? So things like your CHIPS money, those types of programs, okay? We also are asked to do some work over the town court accounts. So again, just looking at processes and procedures over the town courts. And then we also look over the town clerk and receiver of tax monies, okay? So those are all of the different reports that we go through and issue for the town. In fact, we have been out to work on the town court already, and we will be coming out to work on some of the other programs over the next few months, okay? So those are the types of audits that we're doing for the towns. Again, with any audit, there's certain roles and responsibilities just to kind of make sure everybody's on the same page. And those roles and responsibilities really are management, town board. But when we come in and do the audit, we're looking at different internal controls, checks and balances. And those are your internal controls, checks and balances. What you've designed internally, your finance department, your department heads, what they're doing relating to checks and balances, okay? And we're looking at them and we're saying, okay, are these key controls, are these checks and balances operating as you designed them, okay? So that's part of that process that we're going through. Management, if we have any audit adjustments, you have to make those audit adjustments, and of course, providing the information for us to do the audit. So again, certain roles and responsibilities for the different individuals as part of the audit. And with any audit that's done, it's done on what's called a risk-based approach. And really the idea is that, we want to spend more of our time in a higher risk area, okay? So if there's an area where there's not a lot of checks and balances, we might spend a little more time in that area than an area where you have 6 different people looking at something. And that's kind of the idea of a risk-based approach. So we have to kind of take a look at that, and that changes each year, okay? And one of the first things we look at when it comes to a risk-based approach is what's changed from one year to the next, okay? Because anytime there's change, one of the things you have to ask is, do the new folks understand what the processes and procedures are, right? And are they implementing them? Are they following those processes and procedures? So that's part of that process that we go through. And again, some of the areas that we look at, some of the key indicators: change in personnel, new programs that the town may have in place, things of that nature. So those are the types of processes that we go through. So every year, a higher risk area could be different, right? So again, you have a brand new, let's say, payroll person, right? How are they processing the payroll? Do they understand the checks and balances, and are they actually following them? Okay? In addition to that, you know, we also look from the audit that I do, okay, which is an external audit, which is a financial statement level. You know, we look at the key controls, okay? So what are those key controls when it comes to the different checks and balances over the different financial cycles, okay? So it's the different financial cycles, the key controls over those different financial cycles, entity-wide controls, entity-level controls. You know, how are you monitoring certain checks and balances? So we're going through that process as we go through the risk assessment process. And then we're also looking at significant audit areas, okay? And if you folks have any questions as I'm walking through this, please let me know. I'll be happy to kind of stop and try and react to those questions, okay? But again, with the significant audit areas, just to give you an idea, these are some of the areas where, you know, we're always looking at these areas: cash, procurement, payables, payroll. So we're looking at the checks and balances over those areas. And again, the significant checks and balances, okay? In addition to the different internal controls, there's also compliance requirements that we have to look at. So I mentioned the single audit, so the audit of the federal dollars. There's New York State compliance requirements as well, so things like your procurement policy. So New York State General Municipal Law says you have to have policies in place over your purchasing, right? When do you get quotes? When do you get bids? What is that process? So that's an example of a compliance requirement that we look at when we're doing these types of audits, okay? Do you have a policy in place? Does it meet general municipal law? And how are you following, right? For example, you just mentioned you're going to be opening a bid or approving the opening of a bid. That's a good example of compliance with your procurement policy, okay? So again, looking at the different compliance areas, again, just mentioned the community development block grant. That's one of those areas that we've looked at in the past, but that can change depending on the federal dollars that you're receiving. So the TAP program that you were just talking about, those federal dollars, if they exceed, you know, a certain threshold, they could end up being a program that we would audit, okay? So just to give you some examples of that, even though it's funneled through New York State, if they're federal dollars, then that hits that requirement, okay? Couple of other things, we do talk a little bit about the audit process. We do have to assess the risk of fraud, so we can't audit for fraud. That's really not possible in the external audit standpoint, but we have to address the risk of fraud, okay? So how do we do that? You know, it can happen in a couple different ways: misappropriation of assets, fraudulent financial reporting. So again, we're looking at fraud at a financial statement level, so materiality may come into play, but we still have to look and talk to folks about the characteristics of fraud. So as part of our process, we do interview folks within the, you know, in different departments. We ask them questions. We kind of get an idea if they have any concerns, right? And if they do, we have to address those concerns. We have to evaluate them. We have to filter them. We have to understand if they're really significant concerns and how we would address them. So that is a process that we go through, and we do interview different folks as part of that process. So, you know, in addition to what we do, you folks have a role as it relates to fraud. And, you know, you have a responsibility over having processes and procedures in place relating to fraud, okay? And a good example of what the town does is, if you've looked at your employee handbook, there's a section in there that talks about, you know, different compliance, whistleblowing whistleblowing process, an open door policy. So there's a whole section in your employee handbook that talks about the process an employee would go through if they had some concerns and who they would report that to, okay? So that's a good example of what you folks have put in place as part of kind of that fraud prevention and detection measure, okay? Again, we're brainstorming as part of the audit process, but there are always two risks that we have to address. So for every audit, an auditor always has to address the risk of management override of internal controls and the risk of revenue recognition, which are things like your accounts receivable, for example, okay, the timing of when you recognize that. So those are just some examples of what we always have to look at, okay? So just to be aware of that. There could be other areas, but those are two that we always have to address with any audit, okay? So again, that really is part of the audit process, okay, that we go through. Just kind of give you a high-level overview. Again, when we're doing an audit, we don't look at every single transaction, right? That's not what the role of an auditor is, an external auditor. It's based on materiality, and making sure the financial statements, which, your financial statements last year were about 72 pages long, 62 pages long. So, it's making sure those financial statements are free and material in the statement. Okay, but if something does come to our attention, we do communicate it, and we do have to address certain things as we go throughout the audit process. Okay, so that's the process part of it. Does anybody have any questions on that at all? Okay. So just a couple quick items. Part of the audit of 2024. Okay. The basic financial statements of the town. So we did complete that last year. And again, just a couple of highlights from that. We did issue an unqualified opinion. So again, that's the opinion you're looking for when it comes to an audit of a basic financial statement. It basically says the statements are free and material in the statement. So that's the standard opinion you're looking for. We did, as we looked at the financial statements and talked about the financial statements, the town continues to face different challenges, and not only the town of Greece, but all of the towns in New York State, all the municipalities in New York State. Again, challenges relating to the property tax cap and how you manage that, inflation challenges over the past few years, and dealing with those challenges that may have been unanticipated, costs associated with employee benefits. So many municipalities continue to look at those areas and have to face and deal with those challenges. And again, the town ended the year in good financial position last year. Again, some of the things that we look at and some of the things that we talked about last year certainly relate to things like sales tax. And with regard to one of the larger revenues that the town receives, sales tax continues to be very strong. So some of the other factors that we've seen benefit a lot of municipalities over the past few years is interest, right? So you have a certain budget for interest, but because of the interest rates have been fairly strong, you've received some very good return on your investments. The challenge is what goes up may come down. So you have to make sure you're careful when you're budgeting for things of that nature, okay? Because if you go up in your budget for your interest revenues, right, and the rates start coming down, which we all know the last few months, there's been some rate adjustments down, right? You may not recover that. So again, making sure you're monitoring your budgets relating to interest. It looks great at the end of the year, but again, you have to make sure you're managing that and monitoring that. So again, mortgage tax, again, that's some very strong returns, but just minor increases from one year to the next. So, and those are some of the things that we talked a little bit about last year. Again, long-term planning is very important when it comes to the utilization of your fund balance and the understanding of your fund balance. The town does have a fund balance policy, and that policy does talk about target areas. Okay, so it's a pretty important policy that many municipalities have, and it talks about the different funds and kind of target fund balances that you're looking for. So you do have that. One of the areas that the town has utilized over the past is what's called committed funds, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But you've also made some significant investments in your capital program over the past few years. In fact, in 2024, you transferred about $16 million from your general fund over to your capital project fund to support different projects that you have going on. One of them being the police department, right, and the renovations there was one that you've been working on recently. Okay, so again, in terms of the fund balance, so this is just a snapshot of last year's general fund balance. Again, this is in the handout that you have as well. Probably a little bit easier to read than here. But again, the fund balances in municipalities, there's different categories, okay? So non-spendable fund balances, those are those fund balances that aren't in spendable form. In other words, you can't spend those again because they've either already been spent. So the best example is a prepaid expenditure. So you have prepaid expenditures in your financial statements. Well, the cash is already out the door for those dollars. You can't spend it again, okay? So it's considered a non-spendable fund balance, okay? So you're just setting those dollars aside because they've already been spent, or they've been paid out the door, okay? You've got restricted categories, so those are the different reserves that you have, and you have a few reserves. You have some small capital reserves, but you also have some other reserves that are, for the most part, required by law. Things like your federal seized funds, so you get revenue sharing with the federal government when you seize property, and that comes back and it sits in a reserve, and then you can utilize that as part of your budget process, okay? There's a town clerk reserve that's in there, so you've got some dollars set aside in these smaller reserve categories. You've got committed fund balances, so this is where the board has made a determination to set some dollars aside for specific purposes. And you can see last year you had committed fund balances in 2023 for the police headquarters, a skate park, animal shelter. And again, those dollars were some of the part of that $16 million that was transferred to the capital project fund. So you used some of those dollars that you had set aside in committed funds to support the transfer that went to those projects, okay? And again, you can see you've got some other dollars set aside in 2024, so $3 million for parks equipment storage, a solar farm, and a road program. So again, these are dollars that have been set aside for potential projects or plans that the town board was looking to do, okay? And then the last area, the assigned fund balance, those are encumbrances, so items that are committed, okay, for purchases, just haven't been received yet, okay? And then your unassigned fund balance at $9.3 million. So again, that's really there available for operations, available for cash flows. So again, that really is one of those areas that fund balance policy the town board has really talks about that. And your target area, I believe, in your fund balance policy is anywhere between 15 and 20%. So of the following year budget, so that $9.3 million is right around 20% of the 2025 budget. Okay, so again, those are the things that we talk about. You can see the expenditures. They went from $42 million to $58 million from 2023 to 2024, but little over $13 million were directly related to the capital program. Okay, so just to be aware of that. So that's why you see that big increase. It was for transfers specifically related to capital projects, okay? Again, we can get you the detail on all of that, or your finance department can give you the detail on all what the specifics were if you'd like, okay? So again, that's just the general fund and a quick summary. Again, just to understand the importance of fund balance, the highway fund, again, same kind of discussion. You have fund balances, you have reserves. Again, you have the committed fund balances in the highway fund for those programs as well. So again, you have a little over $2.1 million in that unassigned category. Again, you're within that fund balance policy that the board has established. So again, I believe the last time the board had reauthorized that fund balance policy was in 2023. Okay, so that something that can be looked at annually by the town board, but doesn't have to be. okay? So again, the highway fund, again, same type of item. Again, there's the other funds that you have within the town. Again, you know, the capital project I'd mentioned, you had a little over $16 million in capital outlay. You have about $5 million in fund balance at the end of last year in your capital program. And the majority of that related to the public safety renovations. So you were in the middle of the public safety renovations at the end of last year. So the majority of that remaining capital project fund balance related to that public safety building. And also the library master plan. But you also have those other funds, so your debt service, library, water. So again, other non-major funds, won't go through the detail of those funds, but they're out there, the library being the biggest one of those, okay? So those are the different operating funds that the town has, okay? I think the next slide is a little bit more unique to municipalities. Again, this is one of the financial statements in the audit report we go over, but I think it's really important to understand this financial statement because, again, this is one of the first financial statements you see in the audit report, and this is that entity-wide statement of net position. So what I just went through were your operating funds, so your general fund, your highway fund, your library fund. So in addition to having those operating funds, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB, they dictate how these financial statements look. And as part of the financial statements, they want to take all of those operating funds we just talked about and consolidate them into a single column. Okay, so that's what we see on this slide is just a quick summary of that. The challenge with this, so we're trying to make a municipality look more like a corporation. So you consolidate those operating accounts. You add in on the top half of the page all of those capital related items. So your land, your building, all of your vehicles, your infrastructure, okay? So the value of the roads that you own, net of depreciation. So we have to include that in the financial statements. On the middle half of the page, we have to include all of your long-term obligations, okay? So anything that you've made commitments to long-term, okay? And you can see you have a little over $194 million in long-term obligations. And then you come down to a total net position, okay? And this is where it's a little bit important because you look at your total net position, this is $98 million, right? But you have to remember, that's the value of the roads, all of your buildings, things of that nature, right? But we also have our investment in our capital assets. You see that, $187 million, that's great. Then you see that unrestricted negative $91 million, okay? So when you look at a financial statement and you see you have a negative $91 million of unrestricted fund balance, okay? What does that mean? That's really important because this isn't how you operate. This is just trying to make you look more like a corporation. What that means is there's certain liabilities, and it's primarily the liability for retiree health, okay? So if you just take, in these liabilities, you have to recognize the expense, but New York State doesn't allow you to fund them, okay? So you have to recognize the liability, but you can't set dollars aside for it, right? Now, so that's why you see that negative $91 million, all right? I just want to assure you that's not necessarily unusual for governments this size, okay? Especially in the Monroe County area. You look at many other towns that you'll see this type of financial picture. Your school districts in the same type of position. Many of the school districts, you're seeing the same thing, and it really relates to this retiree health obligation. So if you just look at the very last page of the handout, just so everybody's on the same page, is the reason for that deficit is when we look at those liabilities, and you see you only have $14 million in outstanding bonds, right? Those relate to the projects that you have, but you have $17 million in a pension liability. So not only do you pay for your pension liability, you also have to recognize any unfunded share of the New York State pension system, police and retirement, police pension system. So there's an actuarial that says your share of their unfunded liability is $17 million. You have to put that on your books, okay? You pay into the pension system on an annual basis. That's to keep you current. But if the pension system were to end, and that, you know, you would have to pay into that system about $17 million to make yourself whole. Okay, that's just kind of the example. But then the OPEB liability, the other post-employment benefit, you see that $112 million. So you have an actuary, they come in and they look at the contracts that you have and they say, well, based on your contracts, you've committed to your employees, when they retire, $112 million worth of health insurance, okay? You have to recognize that liability. You can't fund it, okay? That's what creates that $91 million deficit, okay? Not unusual for municipalities this size, so just to be aware of that. What you want to pay attention to is the size of the liability compared to your budget, right? Your liability is about 2 times your budget, right? Your general fund budget. So, so that's what you want to kind of pay attention to, is what is that liability? And that's how you can compare yourself to other communities when it comes to this liability as well, okay? So just to be aware of that. If your contracts change, that liability will go up and down. If the health insurance trends change, life expectancy change, that liability goes up and down. So I think it's important just to understand that, because some folks will look at this statement and say, wow, you just said you're in good financial position, right? But then you look at the statement, you see a $91 million deficit. That's the difference between the operating funds, how you budget on an annual basis, almost on almost a cash basis, versus putting everything together and making yourself look like a corporation. Okay? So just to be aware of that, because it's a little unusual. You'd open up a financial statement and you see a $91 million deficit, right? You gotta say, whoa, what is that? So you just have to understand that, okay? So just to be aware of that. All right, so again, those are the key items in the financial statements. Do you have any questions on that? I know I went through it fairly quickly, but again, there's a lot of information in the audit report. So yeah.
I have a question. Can you explain the compensated absences just in general?
So what a compensated absence is, and I think you know, as I was sitting here, you guys had talked about one of the contracts that you're looking to modify, right? So a compensated absence is what's called a vested benefit. So vacation, sick days, things of that nature.
Right.
So we have to, what the town does is they basically, at the end of the year, they calculate what is the liability that you owe to your employees, right? The first calculation relates to vacation, right? And then the second calculation is based on sick days that you may pay out, okay? So that calculates, so that's the components of that compensated absence liability, okay? It's the vacation and sick days based on your contracts that you have outstanding to your employee at the end of the year.
So question to you. It looks like from 23 to 24, there was about, what is that, $1 million difference?
Yeah, yep.
Is there, do you know the reason?
That's a very good question. So the reason it went up is last year, the town had to implement what's called GASB 101. So it's an auditing, or it's an accounting standard that says we're changing the way we value your compensated absence, and it went from, you know, I'll call it a vesting method, you know, who's eligible to receive the benefit, to who's likely to retire and get the benefit, okay? So the town had to recalculate how they looked at the value of that compensated absence, and that's why you see it go up. Because there are a lot of people that may be younger, or, excuse me, that there are a lot of newer employees that, based on the historical trend of the town, you're now recognizing a little bit of a liability for them.
Okay.
So that was a change last year that happened. So that's why you see that increase.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Zuber, thank you for coming in tonight. We appreciate it. I'd like to ask you a high-level question,
Sure.
or more general question. Part of what our interest was in having the auditor come in and talk a little bit about the process is last month at our agenda review, we had questions and concerns and I guess I just have to say this directly, about the previous administration and how things were done here. And again, last month, I was here for a couple weeks, now I'm here for 6 weeks, and, I feel like I know a lot more. But I have, so one of the things that had been talked about was, in a general sense, geez, we ought to do a forensic audit on the town because of that lack of faith or the concerns about what's happened and what's been well publicized in terms of things. Having another 4 weeks here, we had a couple key staff people that were a week or two behind us in terms of joining us who have been here for a month. So I guess I'll make a statement, and I would like to get your thoughts on this. I have tremendous faith and confidence in the people that we have working here. The finance department, I've gotten to know those folks a little bit. I don't work with them every day, but, Director Easterly is really rolled up her sleeves and got to work. And, there are things that we've discovered and things that we're still looking into. I mean, the whole issue of the unpaid, paying people for unused sick time, right? That was something that none of us really knew. A huge liability for the town that we're fixing, and in the schemes of the overall budget, it's offensive and appalling that $350,000 went out the door, but I don't think that's going to jeopardize the town and the town's viability moving forward. I have confidence, and again, the staff here has been very willing in terms of approaching us and telling things that that have gone on here that they're concerned about. I don't think necessarily those things are related to an audit or related to the financial viability of the town, but I do think that there are other things that we're looking into that will be, I'll just say, bad or unsavory, or things that the public won't necessarily like or appreciate. So, our outlook from the administration with this is we have enough, I think, to go on over the course of, and again, the stuff just takes longer than you'd like it to take, but I would think over the course of the next couple of months, we're going to have some things that are equally eye-catching to the public, taxpayers, board members, is what we've done with the sick leave. So I guess I would like to get your thoughts. I'm leaning right now to having confidence in our ability internally to find stuff. I'm by no means am I a financial expert. In my previous jobs, I know people I would consider financial experts. Conversation I had with somebody really hit home with me. Their advice was you look at individual things, and as you look at individual things, if you find something that warrants further investigation, then you go to your auditor, and then you figure out a path to take action with that. So I guess I'm asking a vendor to tell me whether or not they think we need more of their services, which, I'll just qualify that in the beginning. But does it make sense to you, that approach, if right, to say we're going to do a forensic audit? I don't, on some level, I'm not really sure what that means. I would assume that that's incredibly expensive to undertake. I'm not sure it's necessary because, and again, none of this is directed toward Mangel, Metzger, and Barr at all in terms of our concerns, or at least speaking for myself, and I think I'm speaking for others here with that. Does that seem like a sound approach to you, that we'll just sort of take these different issues one at a time, and then as we find things, then come to you, or look at bringing out somebody in from outside and doing a more formal, getting CPAs in here and looking at stuff?
Yeah.
Does that could you give us advice on that?
You know, that's a very good question. You know, obviously, anytime there's change in administration, right, coming in and understanding the financial condition and, you know, what took place in the past, whether it was on policies, procedures, other contracts, whatnot. So it's just taking time to understand it. So I think, you know, as you go through and have questions, you know, obviously sitting down with your finance department is important to understand, you know, what happened, right? And then you can kind of move forward with that. And certainly, you know, we're here to answer any questions and can certainly walk through, you know, hey, if you have a question on the compensated absences, you know, we're happy to sit down and with the finance office and say, you know, this is what we interpreted it as, and here's the contracts that were being followed at the time, and walk through it, right? And then if there's anything that further needs to happen, certainly we'll work with you guys on it, or suggest, you know, maybe it's better to get an independent, you know, person to come in and look at it. But again, that's one of the challenges with an external audit, right? We have to be very careful we don't break our independence, right? So we can only do a certain type of work for the town. As long as it's assurance type work, we can do it. But, you know, that's kind of the idea. When you're talking about forensic audit, yeah, that's a really deep dive into very specific areas, though, right? To just say we want to do it on the whole town, wouldn't mind being the one to do that because it would be pretty expensive, right? So, but I think the point being is you hit the nail right on the head, right? If you're looking at the areas you have questions or concerns on, get an understanding of it, work with your finance department, work with your department heads, and then you kind of move through it that way. And again, we're here to help, walk you through any questions you have. I've been doing this for about 30 years, actually almost 32 now, and so I've seen a lot. And again, we work with a lot of the bigger towns in Monroe County, so Webster, Perrington, Henrietta, Brighton. So, you know, we've seen a lot over the years that we've been doing this, and, you know, again, we're here to help. We're a partner. We have to do an audit and get through it, but if you have any questions on the process or what the numbers mean, we're here to help and happy to meet with folks and walk through it.
Okay. And if I can ask you one other, this is a higher level and more of a general sense with this. The fact that our long-term debt is so low, could you offer your thoughts on that? Like, I know, you know, we just paid a ton of cash for the police headquarters, for the community center with that. You know, my understanding has been there are some things that is reasonable, makes sense, and you should borrow for. And again, I look at those particular buildings. You know, those are buildings that people going out for the next probably 20, 25 years are going to be able to use, and it will serve the town. You know, could you make a comment? Is it wise to spend your cash on that, or how do you draw that distinction between when it makes sense to borrow and when it makes sense to keep your cash reserves in a general high level sense?
Yeah, I can, but I can't, because, you know, generally the audit, we come in after all of those decisions have been made. But I can say this, that different town boards interpret things differently. They have different philosophies. So it's understanding what your town board philosophy is when it comes to things like long-term debt. You know, and it does depend on communities. I see communities that they're really of a mindset, we want to pay cash for everything because we don't want debt. They don't want to incur interest costs, et cetera. But you also have to look at the cost of a project and how you can plan for it and smooth out the cost of projects. So really every community is different, and you just have to look at your specific community, right? I know, and I don't recall, but, you know, obviously there was some large dollars that came in through COVID, and I believe some of those dollars may have been used for some of the capital type projects that the town had. So again, those, you know, that's cash, right? So that does help you avoid the debt piece of it. So again, you have to look at every situation, but certainly when you look at a project, that's something you need to do internally to evaluate that. right? So again, from an audit standpoint, right, it's, you know, what your project is and how you're financing it. But, and you do have professionals, you have some financial planners that do come in and sit with you and can go over the benefits of, you know, whether you issue debt, right, or not. But again, some folks and some interpretations are that while we want to align, we want to spread the cost of this building, let's say, over the people that are going to use it in the future, right?
Right.
That's a concept of somebody of a group that's one way of looking at it versus I don't want to incur the debt, I want to just pay cash and be done with it. So again, different philosophies, and every community is a little different.
Okay, okay, great. Does anybody have any other questions?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. Did your firm audit what the town did with the ARPA money that they received?
Yeah. So I believe the majority of your ARPA funds were spent prior to us coming in, becoming the auditors. So our first year that we became auditors was 2023.
Would it be possible to get the audit of the ARPA funds?
Yeah,
Sorry.
we have the accounting of how that was all spent, definitely.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Because I think we have a lot of people that, especially I'm one of them, you know, the town has built a significant amount of buildings in the last few years, and you wonder where'd all the money come from?
Yeah. So as part of our program, there were required reporting back to the federal government that kind of detailed out some of that spending. So there are reports that went and were submitted to the federal government that detailed what the spending was on. And again, if those spendings happen, that is an area that an auditor would in fact look at when they do audit the financial statements. So just in 2024, yeah, so you had spent, you know, there was no, that I can see, ARP funds that were spent in 2024. So prior to that, so it could have been 2020. I don't have my 23 financials, but there may have been a little in 23. But if I recall, a lot of the ARP dollars were spent prior to 2023. But again, there are reporting and how those dollars were spent that can be pulled.
Does your firm also audit MuniPro?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Is it possible to get those results? I don't know if was this part of this?
So MuniPro is a separately issued financial statement. There's a separate board. It does get blended into the town financial statements, so it does is part of this financial statement, but there's a separate board, separate financial statement. In fact, Director Easterly and I emailed today about getting together and talking a little bit about that process. So we are planning on starting that audit on March 13th. So. But again, we've been working with that for the last 2 years as well.
One last, do we have any debt coming off the books anytime soon? Debt payment services coming off the books anytime soon?
Well, I mean, I can look in the report, but yeah, you have a debt schedule, so you know, you're paying, I think on page, yeah, there's a page in the audit report that schedules out the debt payments. So, you know, for example, you've got $1.7 million that you're paying out in 2025, $1.5 million in 2026. So there's a debt schedule that kind of outlines the future debt payments relating to the different bonds they have. So that's on page 41 of the 24 financial statements.
Oh, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, Mr. Zuber, thank you. We appreciate you coming, and this has been very informative, so thank you. And with that, there's no other business tonight, so we stand adjourned.